welcome back. I'm Elizabeth, the curly-haired country gal. Now, in my last video, part one of this three-part saga of 2024 beekeeping, I was telling you about the splits that I did to multiply my apiary and keep my bees healthy. In this video, I'm going to update you on how catching swarms went, some great things and some not so great things. Let's do this thing. So first of all, this year I put up 10 swarm traps, which is 4 more than I did last year. I followed Dr. Leo's plans to make some lightweight swarm traps. I love the lightweight swarm traps. A huge improvement this year with the swarm traps was a very simple addition that made my life so much easier and safer. Actually, my husband's life, because he was the one hanging in the swarm traps. We've put French cleats on. So I'll put a link in the description with the video that I found. But they're very simple. You just take a 2x4 or whatever kind of board, you cut it at a 45-degree angle. 1/2 goes on the swarm trap, 1/2 goes on to the tree, and you can just hook it on. It makes it so much easier to hang the traps and so much safer. So that was really nice. So I'm still a fan of the heavy-duty swarm traps, kind of, but I really like the lightweight ones. It's so nice not to have something so bulky going 10 feet up a ladder. And speaking of which, a lot of people have great success catching swarms at ground level. That's great. I tried putting my swarm traps just at the top of a ladder last year, 6 feet up, and I only caught 1 swarm, whereas my first year I caught 4. So this year I wanted to go higher again and see if that made a difference. And it seems to have made somewhat of a difference. So far, we're almost to July. This is Sunday, July 23rd, and I've caught 3 swarms so far, and I was able to pick one up from a work site that a friend let me know about, so I'll come back to that. Now recently, my friend Monty, the suburban sodbuster, did a video where he talked about using Swarm Commander or not and comparing the two, and it did sound like using Swarm Commander was advantageous for him. So I'm kind of curious next year to hang up my traps all in the same locations, but go ahead and use the Swarm Commander and see if that makes a difference. Always a learning experience. So the swarms that I caught went into the peacock hive, which, as you know from the last video, didn't have bees in it because the split I had done failed because I put too many resources in it and it got robbed out. The second swarm went into the elephant hive, and the third swarm went into the fingerprint hive, which was also one that had been robbed out. One of them went into the elephant hive because that one was actually a nuke that I sold, and I'll talk more about that in the next video. So overall, it was great that I caught 3 swarms. Like I mentioned earlier, a friend from our fellowship messaged our group and said, "Hey, I've got these bees inside these 2 pallets on the back of my semi truck. Do you know somebody who can come and pick them up?" And I said, me, I'll do it. So I was able to go out there with a swarm trap and try and collect all these bees. I was on somewhat of a time constraint, so I looked for the queen. I actually found her. She was the darkest queen I had ever seen. She was so beautiful, but then I missed her before I had my queen clip to grab her. So I just started scooping up the bees and putting them into the swarm trap. I had to leave. The next night I came, there were no more bees to be seen outside of the trap, so I thought it was a successful catch, brought the bees home, got them transferred in. Now I picked up that swarm on May 9th, and it was just maybe a week ago that I got into that hive, and unfortunately I found that there was no brood and I couldn't find the queen, and I hadn't been able to find her when I put the bees into the hive originally. I hadn't been worried about it. I wasn't necessarily trying to find her, but the lack of brood showed me that I either missed her or maybe injured her on the move, but unfortunately there was no brood for them to make a new queen. So that's my big takeaway from catching swarms, is to make sure you get the queen. And so they are now in the mountain hive, and I'll come back to how that seems to be resolving in the next video. And then the last big issue that I had with catching and transferring swarms was so preventable. So learn from my mistakes. I can tend to avoid finishing a project because I think, oh, I'll come back to it. Oh, I'll remember. No, I won't. But with the peacock hive, I got all the frames moved in, and for some reason, I don't know why, there was one frame that I didn't push all the way up against another frame. I left like an inch. And so when I got back in last weekend, unsurprisingly, the bees had built a beautiful, huge piece of comb in between the 2 frames that I had given them. but that's not super workable when I'm trying to get into the hive. So I knew it was important to get that out. So I went ahead and gently cut it out. As soon as I cut it out, it kind of collapsed because it was so heavy. It didn't have anything to hang on. So it was this big sticky mess. I scooped it out. I put it out away from the hive so that the bees could get any resources out. Unfortunately, it was a big frame of brood, so I felt bad about the bees not having much of a chance to live outside of that. I tried to get it back onto a frame, but everything was too warm that it was just kind of sliding down. So that was a big no-no that I did. Make sure you push the frames all the way together. I just really hoped that the queen wasn't on that frame as I cut it out, because she maybe would have gotten crushed. So I'll follow up with that, you guessed it, in the next video. But still, that left my colony count at 20. I had 16 at the end of the last video, caught 3 swarms, and was able to pick up 1 from a job site. So in the next video, I'm going to talk about how I have been attempting to introduce some virgin queens to some colonies where there were some issues, and combining colonies. Thanks for watching.